Hello everybody, welcome to the beloved channel. We all know that the season of waiting is not easy, especially when you're waiting for the Lord to speak to you who you are going to marry or get married to. This is a season that requires grace, because in most cases we find ourselves helping God or doing whatever we can in our power. We get what we want, but then we realize that, man, this is not what God intended for me to have. This is not what God had planned for me. And it just takes so much grace for us to be patient to receive that which God has given us. So he gives us the grace for us to be patient. And once we are patient, whatever it is that we have asked God to give us, it comes at the right time. Let's talk about the season of waiting to get married, to meet the right person, to date that person, and then finally get married. Trish is here to share her story of how she met the now husband that she's married to, and also her season of waiting and how she ended up knowing that this was the right person that God had kept for her. There are some key points I want you to grasp, so stay tuned, watch the whole video, because I don't want you to miss anything. So let's go to this first session and see what she had to say. Thank you for being here, Trish. Tell us about your podcast.
Thank you for having me. So yes, I do run a podcast. It's called the 360 Perspective Podcast, and it's a faith-based podcast where we get to discuss all things matters faith, just about Christian living, but then we also get to hear different stories from different people and just their journeys of faith, their journeys of life, and how God has worked in them and through them to bring glory to his name. So that's the podcast.
Could you tell us about your waiting season?
My waiting season. Well, I'd say one. My waiting season was quite a long one, but at the same time, I'd say it was a fun one. It had its moments. There were moments when I feel like I had the grace, to just be single and enjoy my life and just travel around and just get to discover myself and build a community that was super amazing, that literally held me down in different phases of my life of singlehood. But then I think for me, the waiting season was also grounded in such a level of faith, of knowing that God is faithful, and him making me wait wasn't because he didn't love me. It wasn't because he didn't care about me, not because he didn't want me to enjoy the blessing that marriage comes with. But I knew that regardless of how long that season was going to be, that God was going to be faithful to fulfill the promise. Whenever that was going to be, or however way it was going to look like, I had such a profound sense of faith in knowing that ultimately my waiting season would bring glory to God's name. When I knew my season was changing from the waiting season into a season of marriage, it was my birthday in 2023 and 22, towards the end of the year, September. And I remember just praying, because normally during my birthday I have this quiet time to just hear from God. What is he saying about the next season? What does he want of me? What is he asking of me? And also, what is he speaking into my life? So I remember having this quiet time and just asking God, what is it that you are saying in regards to this next season that I was entering into? And I remember God clearly speaking about two main areas of my life. And one was that he was going to settle me at my workplace, because at that time I had a lot of issues at work, and I was contemplating on whether to quit my job and resign and leave my work, because there was just too much that was going on. So I remember God speaking in regards to settling me in my workplace. And then secondly, so loud and clear, he was like, I'm going to settle you in marriage. And I remember just journaling that and knowing that the next season that I was entering into, I needed to look out for the two major promises that God had spoken over. And sure enough, after a couple of months in my workplace, God did settle me. He sorted out all the issues I was going through. I didn't have to resign, like literally restored everything that was going on at my workplace. And so I knew for sure God had spoken. And I knew the next promise that he was going to fulfill that he'd also spoken was that he was going to settle me in marriage. And so I knew I needed to walk in discernment to know who is this individual, who's this man that God has set apart for me to do life with. And funny thing is, literally it's like the heavens opened. You know, when you move from a season where you're not going out on dates and it was a bit quiet and dry to all of a sudden they're like all these guys who are interested in you, who want to take you out for coffee. So in my mind I was like, oh, okay, I guess if God has spoken this is the season, then I need to be, you know, proactive, go out on dates, go for coffees. And so that's what I did. I went out to like a couple of coffees with different guys, and literally it was just like one elimination after another, either doctrine or thought processes, or just feeling like I'm not mentally connected to this guy. So I went to like multiple dates, and I remember one of the guys that I thought maybe this one is the one. I felt like he checked some of my boxes, you know, which funny thing is that God literally had to change my list completely, because then I realized that I was focused on superficial things and not the things of the kingdom in regards to what God really wanted me to look at for a spouse, in a spouse that I was looking to you know, do life with. So I remember this guy had all this, you know, like check my list in terms of like well traveled, well exposed, you know, like accolades, you know, whatever he's doing, his career, his income, like all these different things. And above all, he was a believer, literally a prayer warrior, man of God, you know. And so in my head I thought, okay, yeah, this is the perfect one, God's anointed. I literally said, like, you know, the way when Samuel went to anoint the sons of Jesse, and you know, he saw one of the sons of Jesse and was like, surely this is the Lord's anointed, you know. And so in my head that guy literally fit the box. But I remember just going for all these coffee dates with him, and my spirit would be so anxious every single time. And I couldn't quite pinpoint what the issue was, because I was like, but God, this guy is like a prayer warrior. He's a Christian, like I can't find any fault in him. But every time we go out on dates, like my spirit would be so anxious. And eventually I literally had to give it up. I was like, God, I can't have peace with this guy, and I don't know what it is, but you're the one who knows. You know the end from the beginning. And so as much as I thought this is the guy you have for me, I'm gonna let it go. And literally that was the last guy that I went out on a date with, because then I went back to just resting in God and just knowing that if God said it, like I don't have, you know, like how they say helping out God, because for me now that's what I was doing, literally like helping out God and, you know, figuring out where is this guy. So you've already said you're releasing him. But then I think after just having all this anxiety with this guy who was a Christian guy, and just releasing him and going back to that place of resting in God, because after that I told God, okay, I'm done, you know, going out for all these coffee dates. I've gone to enough of them, and that guy doesn't seem, the man that you have for me to marry doesn't seem to be in any of the group that I've gone out with. So I told myself I'm just going to rest in God, and I'll go back to just being faithful in the things of the kingdom, and, you know, just being focused in serving him and doing his things. And I just let it go. And funny thing is, I remember with this guy whom I was already building an attachment with, there's a time, actually our very last date that I went with this guy, that evening I remember starting to feel funny in my body, and I was like, I don't think I'm feeling okay. I just feel like something is a bit off with my body. It's like, hey, yeah, you just go check and whatnot. Like, he didn't make a big deal out of it, but I remember just insisting I'm not okay. So so I think after the date I was like, yeah, I think first thing in the morning I'll go and get checked in hospital. And so that's what happened. The next morning when I woke up, I literally walked my way, made my way to the hospital. and I knew for sure something was just off. And true to it, like I got to the hospital, the doctor took my vitals and they did all these tests, and the doctor told me, actually, unfortunately, you are in a critical state and we can't even release you to go back home. You'll have to be admitted immediately. And so in my head, I was like, oh, wow, this is crazy. So I was wondering, now who do I talk to? Who do I open up to? So I rang this guy up because I thought, well, at least he had a bit of, the information on what's been going on. So I called him up and I was like, hey, guess what? I've come to the hospital and this is what the doctor said. I have to be admitted immediately because it's a critical case. I was like, oh, really? Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, wow, that's serious. And that was it. The guy never came to see me in hospital, not even a single day, never showed up. And for me, that was such a confirmation for sure. This one, that's not the man that God has for me. He may be a prayer warrior, he may be all those things, but I knew for me that was such a key confirmation as to why part of the anxiety I was having was part of the confirmation. That man is not for me. He never came to hospital, literally came to see me after I got discharged from hospital when I'm back to be my happy self. And for me, I literally closed that chapter and I knew this is not for me. And in hindsight, by the time I was meeting my husband, looking at the anxiety that I had with this previous guy versus the level of peace that I had with my now husband was such a key confirmation on the individual that God had for me. And so that journey of waiting on God, I fully gave of myself in serving in God's kingdom. In one of the big things that I was really passionate about, and I still am passionate about, is walking and doing life with other women, especially younger women, and discipling them and mentoring them. And so I remember in my season of waiting, just pouring myself out to walk with many ladies, which I think when God turned my story around, it was so beautiful because the women that I journeyed with got a front row seat in just seeing how God causes all things to work together for our good, even in the waiting. And so these were women who would see me speak out of faith, in terms of I still trust that God will bring that promise to pass. Yes, I may not be dating around, I may not be doing the things that everyone else is doing out here, but then I knew that whatever seemed or looked foolish in the eyes of man was actually God's wisdom. And so it was so beautiful in that they saw how God fulfilled that promise and brought everything to pass and just made all things beautiful. And so I'd say my waiting season had its moments, not to say that I didn't have moments of, struggling or feeling like I'm weary and tired of waiting, and like during those seasons when it's me and mine, Christmas and Valentine's, and like all those moments when you go on social media and there's a proposal, there's a wedding, there's like all these things happening, and then you almost feel like nothing is happening in your life. You've been waiting on God's promises, you've been faithfully serving, and yet you're not seeing the promise coming to life. I think definitely I had those moments of just feeling weary and tired, but I remember in those instances I would take my fears and my worries and my concerns to God. Definitely there was that fear about age, I'm getting older, and there's no one hitting on me, there's no prospect of a spouse or marriage, and just the desire to start a family or have my own family, and just the weariness that comes even with societal pressure and family pressure and all that. So definitely I did go through all those different motions and seasons, but I remember every time I'd have that weightiness of all these thoughts and anxiety, every time I would surrender them to God. It didn't matter how many times they would, run through my mind, but I remember I would take those thoughts captive and surrender them to God and remind myself that my faith is anchored in God. It's not anchored in a timeline. It's not anchored in the outcomes that, are happening around me or in my life, but then my faith is anchored in who God is and his character and who he says he is, that he is a faithful God and that he can never deny himself in regards to his faithfulness. And so I'd say definitely my waiting season was one of those that had its moments, but the core part of it was just trusting that God is faithful and that he was going to fulfill his promises in regards to a godly marriage in my life.
So in this first session, she has spoken about her dating season and how she could not find peace while she was dating this person that she thought was the right person for her. And I just want to lay it out there for you. How many times or how many of you have dated someone and you have not felt peace at all? And you don't understand why is it that you don't feel peace with this person. Maybe the Lord is telling you, hey, back off. That's not the right person I have for you. I have someone better for you. And not to say that there is something wrong with this person. Maybe this person is best for another person, but what God has for you is way better than what you think is best for you. When she didn't have peace in her heart in regards to this man, that's when she had to surrender that relationship unto the Lord and allowed God to do his part. Let's go to this second session. So tell us, how did you meet your husband and how did you know that he was the one for you?
All right, so how did we meet and how did I know he's the one? So we met in church, at my church. We were having an Easter concert. My church had organized this wonderful Easter concert that is quite huge and big back in Nairobi. And so we had people from different churches and visitors just coming to watch the play. And so part of his team from his church had actually come to watch the play. And so I remember just catching up with one of the pastors from his church at the parking lot, and who were just having like some small banter at the parking. And then this guy walks towards us, so we were literally standing next to the gents toilet. So he comes by, and then because he knew the pastor that I was talking to, because she was one of the pastors in his church, so he came to say hi and then said hi to me as well. And then I remember this female pastor introducing us to each other, and she's like, oh wait, Oscar, you don't know Trisha? Trisha, you don't know Oscar? And we're like, no. Yeah, she was like, ah. Then after a few minutes she was like, wait, Trisha, are you still single? And then she looked at him and she was like, Oscar, you still single? And then she was like, oh, okay, because she did. I'm not sure whether we answered or what we said. I think I just said no. And then after that, she was like, okay, I'm out of here. And literally she walked out and left the two of us there. It was a bit awkward. In that instance, I was like, okay, what an awkward introduction this is. Because it was like kind of like an indirect hookup. But anyway, I can't complain because it somewhat worked. But I remember it being so weird that after we left the two of us, it was such an awkward interaction. Then after that, he went because he was going to the washrooms, and then I just went about my business in church. And I was like, okay, brother, you just lost your opportunity, because he really didn't ask for my number. And then because I knew there were so many people who'd come to watch the play, like the whole compound, the whole sanctuary, the overflow area was fully packed. So I definitely knew there was no way that we were going to see each other again. But I tend to say that as God would have it, right before the play ended, he stepped out of the sanctuary, and coincidentally, I just happened to be sitting right near the door. And so as he stepped out, definitely he noticed me, and then he was going to say hi to a friend. So he stepped out for like a few minutes, and then he came back and literally just asked me for my number. He was like, hey, it was nice meeting you. Do you mind if I take your number? I'd love to take you out for coffee. And honestly, I keep saying I've been around so many church guys, but just the fact that some of them were never really forthright with what they wanted, for me, that low-key won me over in a way. But just going back to that question of how did I discern and how did I know that he's the one? So one of things that I remember having during that time when we met, when I saw him walking towards us. I remember this thought crossing my mind, and I was like, who's that fine guy approaching us? When I was talking to the pastor from their church, and then in my mind I was like, oh God, all the good men are taken, they're all married, because I don't know, he kind of looked well put together to be a single guy. So already in my mind I was like, okay, this guy is married. But now definitely things changed up when the pastor asked him directly whether he was still in the market or not. But I remember just having that conversation in our initial interaction, and I had this overwhelming sense of peace, which was just too uncommon. And then I remember the same feeling happening when he asked me for my number, and I had this overwhelming sense of peace, like literally like just a rush through my body. And I was like, wait a minute, this is not ordinary, this is not common. And funny thing is, I remember that day when we met, going back home and journaling, and I literally titled my journal that night, literally just having conversations with God. And I was like, hey, could this be my husband? And I remember just writing down my thoughts and telling God, hey, I just met this guy, and I don't know, like something picked up in my spirit that I hadn't picked it up with any other guy before. And I was like, this is a bit uncommon, and I just had this conversation with God, and I was like, okay, I don't know what like what your plan is, but just let me know. And then I also literally called my my sister in the States, and I shared with her, and I just told her I met this guy, and there's just this feeling that I'm having, and there's a level of peace that I can't quite explain. And so I just told her, let's pray, pray that if this is a person, that God will continue to give clarity, and if he is not, pray that God would remove them so that I'm not distracted and it doesn't distract me from my purpose, and let it happen soon enough so that my heart is not attached. And so she prayed, and she continued praying about it. And I'd say, I think sometimes it's important to make those dangerous prayers, just ask God, is this the person? If it's not the one, then just remove them. And let me tell you, God answers those prayers really quickly. So I think for my case, the fact that I prayed that prayer before getting too attached, it allowed God to move and act in the direction that he desired. And that was more in regards to bringing more clarity the more we went out on dates, and we communicated and involved our community around us to speak into the friendship that was growing, the fondness that was growing. And there were so many confirmations and clarifications along the journey. And I have to say, there's definitely a huge difference between dating in privacy, and there's a difference between there's privacy and secrecy. So I think you can be private in terms of like not showcasing on social media, and or my man, kind of thing. And just doing it in privacy, in the sense of you have your community that you're accountable to, you have mentors you're working with, there's this thing going on between the two of you, but then there's also a community around you that is also aware that there's this thing that is going on, without necessarily publicizing it. Because the dangers of dating in secrecy is that you don't allow community around you to speak into your relationship, and you don't invite them in.
In summary, what are some of the key points you would say that you have learned from the waiting season all the way to the time you got married?
So yeah, I'd say some of the lessons that I learned in terms of just leaning on God and not leaning on your own understanding. As Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll make your path straight. And I think that's such a critical verse, especially when you're in that place of waiting, choosing not to lean on your own understanding and fully leaning on God and his promises and what he's speaking over your life in that season. It's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to take matters into your own hands. It's so easy to start panicking and fearing what will happen to me. Will I ever get kids? Will I ever get married? Will I, like all these mini questions. But one of the lessons that I learned throughout my waiting season into marriage is that you're better off relying on God and waiting on God, and knowing that in due time He'll bring His promises to pass. And when He does it, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's full of peace and full of clarity and full of confirmations, and you will have no doubts whatsoever that truly this is what the Lord has done. And I remember for me, the culmination of all that was that by the time we were getting married on our wedding day, people gave so much that it catered for our wedding, our honeymoon. Literally, we didn't have to spend a dime. Why? Because God showed up in the fullness of His glory, because of the faith that we had in Him, and because of choosing to wait, and not just waiting anyhow, but waiting well on God. And so for me, one of the lessons I'd say is one, trusting God and lean on the Holy Spirit and the knowledge of God, and not in your own understanding. But also the other lesson I'd say is that God is worth the wait. He absolutely is worth it. Waiting on God, yes, it may be wearisome sometimes, but then He is worth the wait. By the time He brings that promise to fulfillment, you'll be glad that you waited. As the Bible says, that His blessings maketh rich and addeth no sorrow. Wherever He will plant you in that marriage or relationship, you'll be full of blessings and joy and so many beautiful things, because God is the one who will be behind the work that He will have brought to pass in your life. So those are some of the lessons. The other one is also, yes, date in privacy and not secrecy, but date around a community. Have a community of believers and wise people. Speak into you, speak into your life, speak into that relationship, help you evaluate and see, is this the right relationship? Is this person truly godly? So I think for me, those are some of the lessons that I'd love to pass on to somebody who's in the waiting season.
After you've listened now to the whole story, when she met him, I just feel like she felt that, this is too good to be true. How peaceful she felt around him, even when they were dating, to the point where she was like, wait a minute, what's going on? I feel so much peace whenever I'm with this person. And guys, let me tell you, the things of the Lord, when God brings something, it always feels like it's too good to be true, because He gives you the very best. And her testimony just shows exactly that it felt like it was too good to be true. When she let go of the other relationship and surrendered it to the Lord, she realized that, man, I cannot help God in finding a husband for me. So she had to let him go, and that's when God brought this person for her. So what do we learn from this? First of all, you cannot assist God in finding the person for you. Sometimes, even when God gives you a word, He's not asking you to do all these things to make it happen. He's just telling you, hey, as a matter of fact, I'm going to give you this. But you see, sometimes when you get the word that God is going to give you something, we try to make it happen ourselves. What else? That's not what He's asking us to do. And sometimes He'll give you some steps. He will give you some directions and tell you, hey, you need to do this and this for you to receive this. But in many times, He just wants you to believe. He just wants you to sit back, believe that He has given you that which He has promised to give you, and watch and see Him work. Don't assist Him. If He hasn't asked you to assist Him, please do not assist Him. Just do your part, what He has asked you to do, and He will do the rest. The Word of God says that the promises of God are yes, and amen is said unto us. So all His promises are yes, He will bring them to fruition. And at the end of the day, you will say amen, because they will happen. And also, I'll leave you with this last Bible verse. Numbers 23:19. It says that God is not a man that He should lie, or a son of man that He should change His mind. If He has spoken, He will do it. If He has promised, He will fulfill it. So believe, have faith, Know that God hasn't forgotten you. It doesn't matter how long it takes for you to find that person, for him to bring your wife or your husband. Just know that he has the best interest for you at heart, and he will bring to fruition. I hope this message was inspiring. I hope it was uplifting to you. If you also want to share your story, how God blessed you with your spouse, kindly comment and also share this message with others so that it can be a blessing to them too. God bless you, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye. When I tell you got me talking, and we gotta do what he said, I know you'll trust it.